we'll be recording this meeting as I'm starting it right now for you and others to view afterwards. So I'm sure Courtney has a lot of great information uh, in her presentation that you'll want to look back at. So without further delay, I'll just turn it over to Courtney and take us away. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks everyone for being here. If you can, Stephen, enable participant screen sharing, that would be helpful.
Right.
So while Stephen does that, as a little bit of background, I'm the SVP of Destination Branding and Strategy for Meet Minneapolis, which is the destination marketing organization for Minneapolis. Fancy way of saying marketing PR, our visitor center that is currently closed, but hopefully will reopen soon at 5th and Nicollet, as well as our partnership department. So while we are Minneapolis's destination marketing organization that is charged with bringing conventions to the Minneapolis Convention Center, we do have partners throughout the metro area and honestly the state. We know that when you talk to visitors and where they're coming from, oftentimes they cross the river into Northeast and they think that they are in St. Paul. If you go to the Mall of America, it's generally in Minneapolis and nobody knows where the airport is. So we really recognize that and embrace that and understand that the economic prosperity of the region is really to benefit of it's all up to all of us. I think that, there's a lot of destination marketing organizations in the space and we have a very collaborative relationship with them because we realize how fluid all of that is. So with that, I'm going to share some slides, some of which we did share at our last annual meeting, which was just a couple of weeks ago, and some of which are new just for you. But first, I kind of want to take a look back. We last got together and we talked about, more than a year ago, we really saw this first case that hit Minnesota. And then we had all of our big shutdown, which everybody remembers when things really jumped off a cliff overnight. And that's something that we saw. I mean, if you look at these room night demands through 2019 through 2020, dropped off a cliff, started to steadily increase a little bit with the summer and even a little bit into the fall, but then it really went on the decline through the winter again. I do want to share that we just did get last week's STR numbers and we did hit 20% occupancy for the week, which is a small win, but an important one for us. And we are seeing some nice upticks. Valentine's Day weekend in Minneapolis was quite busy with almost 50% occupancy, which was honestly the highest that we have seen since the early 2020. We did have an exceedingly large number of groups that were canceled. We were able to rebook about 25% of them, mostly those big, large ones that were able to move into a future year. As we know, the annuals in general tried to move, and then they ended up, in most cases, canceling altogether or moving to a virtual experience. So very proud of our sales team for what they were able to recapture and bring to the market, particularly as it relates to 23, 24, 25. We would be remiss to talk about if we did not talk about the crises within a crisis. I think the last time I spoke to you was before May 25th, but the impact on the death of George Floyd with Minneapolis and the larger conversation around the city in the press, in the national and international media, is incredibly impactful to our destination and continues to be a part of the conversation. Knowing that it really did spark a national movement. So that's something that we are continuing to manage and work through. And also do want to flag, particularly as it relates to group business, that we did then make things a little bit more challenging when City Council went up and said that we were going to defund or dismantle the police. We know that's not what happened in Minneapolis. Ultimately, although there are a lot of pushes for reform and change, but the words abolish or dismantle were new to a lot of people, and it really caused a lot of concern and confusion. So the way that I've often described it is it created this fear, particularly if you talk about meeting planners or visitors, that if I call 911, will anybody answer? And if they do respond, are they going to make the situation worse? So that's really how I kind of sum up how all of the police activity and the death of George Floyd has impacted that granular. How does that impact me? How does it impact my travel decision? And we are very much keenly involved with everything that's going on with the trial from a communications standpoint to our clients as well as to media tell the story that we are more than what happened here. So again, this is some of the press coverage that we know that we saw on a national scale. And this is what I talked about with the dismantling or abolishing the police department and what those conversations looked like. And obviously those are very, very large mastheads, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, AP. So very wide ranging story. Wasn't all bad last year. We did see a lot of opportunities in the public relations realm to be able to talk about our minority owned businesses. And we also did go out with a campaign called We Need Us. So this is something that we did have in the neighborhoods as well as downtown with imagery on billboards and signs showcasing small business owners and really just trying to remind our local community to help support those small businesses that were so much in need. And this is something, some work that we're tremendously proud of. And actually HSMAI had their award ceremony last night and we earned 2 silver awards, one for this campaign and another for Crisis Communications. And that immediately asked the question of who won gold. Well, those were like Puerto Rico and Jamaica. Those are countries, as it were, or country states. So I feel very proud about our silver and what we were able to accomplish there. And the recognition from HSMAI was wonderful to see. We also focus a lot, obviously, on what happened as it related to the GBAC certification with the convention center, all the clean and safe programs that all of our hotel partners had to offer. We continue to reach out to meeting planners, continue to stay engaged with them, stay top of mind, and really did talk a lot about how we knew that this impact was going to continue to carry on into the future. To resecure some of that business as well as capture some new business in this short-term period, we did go out with a meeting incentive. This meeting incentive is still valid and will continue to be. The reality is we know that the groups will be slow to come back, and I'll talk a little bit about that really into the back half of the year. So the opportunity for us to say, how can we fill as best we can that June through December time period and then rolling into 2022. We continue to do site inspections, virtual site inspections, in-person site inspections, had a lot of really great opportunities and experience and a lot of great feedback from clients who very much appreciated what we were offering here. All of this has been under the umbrella of when you're ready, we're ready, which is very common. You've probably seen a lot of this. I will talk a little bit later about how we are moving away from this message into the we're ready, we're here, or we're ready to book versus we're ready to plan, which I think is a very important milestone for us as a destination. So talking a little bit about, the net, where are we? What have we seen? What are we forecasting? What are we looking at? So if you go back in time, there were properties that opened last year in the pandemic or right before, and there continues to be a lot that's underway. Most of it kind of looking at this 2022 time period, but certainly that's something that, while Four Seasons has been, I would say, the most high profile, as that's the first 5-star property that we've had in Minneapolis. There are a lot of other ones, including some that are outside of the downtown core, that will continue to have that additional supply that will come into market. So certainly this is something that we're taking into consideration as part of our forecast STR. So you can see, again, where some of these redevelopments are happening and taking place, some of them across the river as well near the U, and then finally some of a little bit outside of the city core. So this is good as it relates to the product, more diversification of the product into more neighborhoods. Will provide different opportunities and experiences for visitors. So we are excited about that. So as you look at some of these supply assumptions that relates to STR, you can see where some of these forecasts really took the dip. You'll see that bounce back up, but it really is going to be a slow roll and a slow growing as it relates to the supply. Unlike other markets, Minneapolis did not have as many hotels that closed and stayed closed. So we did have a couple properties that did go off that won't reopen. But a majority of our properties stayed open throughout or with only short-term shutdowns, which was very different than, say, New York or San Francisco or some of those other larger cities. Again, you can see the supply. This is, the occupancy dip and the fall off the cliff, and hopefully the very quick rebound into 2021, 2022, but you can still see that there's a tremendous lag as it relates to sort of this recovery and this extended drawn out period of time. So again, particularly this will be exacerbated by the additional supply that we do anticipate that will come on the market as far as that occupancy number is concerned. demand obviously will hopefully tell a better picture, but that compression that we would otherwise see is not something that we do anticipate will be happening in the next 18 months. Similar story, ADR, again, kind of a slow rollback into the numbers that we saw pre-pandemic, and RevPAR as well. We are using a couple of new forecasting tools that I think it's important for you to know about, or at least for others potentially within your organizations to know about. So we are working with tourism and economics, Two Synergies, which is kind of a bought and revisioned product to show how these forecasting numbers have come into place, what the benchmark demand is, and basically there continues to be this unknown level of uncertainty, particularly as it relates to the openings and where those meetings come back and what's going to be able to meet. But you can see from, again, a US aggregate perspective, from, again, coming from tourism economics and Two Synergies, you can see that that group benchmark really isn't going to be coming back net until 2024. And that also includes, you know, some of these kind of group demands that will pull into that calculation. So those are the numbers. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you go back to the previous slide, so what do you think the biggest thing is that's holding up 2023 from getting back? So, you know, it seems like, you know, the pandemic's gonna be quite a ways away. So
so when what I think when I see this is because it's US aggregate is the international. I think that international is really dragging down, and we don't get a lot of international group, but you know, some of the bigger cities on the coast especially do. And so I think that there's a lot of hesitancy and nervousness about that in particular, and just the lag of the business travel as well. I think that that's a huge unknown, is how much are people going to continue to meet like this and call that good enough, and how much business travel we're going to want to get back on the plane and jump all around the world. So I would yeah,
I've seen the same thing.
Of an optimist, I would say. I feel like 2024 seems like a long ways away, at least for our market. I think that we'll I think that we'll have a really good sense. I would say probably a year, but maybe in 6 months, in terms of what's that pent up demand, how quickly does that come back, and then the new base level that we're building off of. Does it continue to go on a steep curve, or does it go up and then very quickly only have
right? If you know, in 2020 we just got off a how many year run of large events in Minneapolis, and I don't have the calendar in front of me, and I don't remember offhand. Do we have anything coming up at that magnitude in the next 5 years?
The biggest thing that we have on the books right now is the women's Final Four, which will be at Target Center, which is basically this time next year. So that's the biggest big sporting event win. A lot of those decisions and some of those larger aggressive ones that we were going after have delayed their decisions. I would say that most of those are looking at like 25, 26, nothing in the nothing close in. The big close in is women's Final Four.
Are we going to have, I think annually we had something with the US volleyball that was here every year.
Yep. So they continue to stay engaged. Yeah. Again, May, you know, was kind of the timing of their tournament. So that is not going to be happening this year, but optimistic that they would come and continue to run. And there's a couple of programs that they run here. And there are a couple smaller things, but higher profile, that are on the books even for this year. Still fencing in May is an Olympic qualifier. And then also Paralympics trials as well in June that are scheduled to take place in 3 different sports. Those tend to be not as large spectator sports that would have that demand driver. Important in their fields, but not necessarily huge overnight stays.
Right.
Any other questions on some of that demand or the forecasting magic, the crystal ball, the 8 ball?
Someone asked in the chat if we are going to get the slides. Yes, the reading's being recorded, and then we'll post the slides on our website for those of you who are wondering.
Okay. So, leisure travel. So this is where I need to talk about some good stuff. Obviously, if you look historically, you can see just from these word clouds, how do people feel about travel? Scared, anxious, hesitant, cautious. And now this moves into still cautious, but excited, hopeful, a realization of some of those words that people aren't ready. So people are really moving into that I'm ready phase. There's still this unknown impact as it relates to international and quarantine requirements and vaccination cards and proof of vaccination and testing on airplanes and things like that. And I believe that it's going to continue to see that's going to drag out. But as far as domestic travel, as it relates to the summer of 2021, is looking very positive. You can see that, again, part of this, kind of going back to why is this going to be so complicated, a lot of people don't want to share that data. They don't want to share with travel suppliers their vaccine status, as it were. So I think one of the things that's very interesting here is that right here, this is the census data. Once you go into a more refined pool of people who identify as travelers or who have taken trips or things like that, they are much less hesitant to get the vaccine, and they're much more willing to share their data, which I think is good for us from a travel perspective in terms of are we welcoming vaccinated people into our market, and how much are they open to sharing information if it is necessitated. So just kind of a caveat here. Road trips continue to be big. The idea of them controlling the travel experience, I don't think that we'll see as much of an impact on that perhaps this year as we did last year, simply because people are so excited to travel. The leisure trips, 75% of trips within 250 miles, there's always been a very strong, most trips are close-in trips. They're not vacations, they're weekend getaways, and that's really what we're looking at. But you can see this really falls with the peak season, the peak summer season. When do people think that they're going to be going, and when do people think that they're going to be willing to get on a plane? I think that this is a wonderful way to summarize how people feel. People feel like they've been denied, and they're really excited to explore. In retail, they're calling it peacocking phenomenon, which is really interesting, which is basically that everybody's going to double down on their wardrobe and like getting their hair done and all these other things, because people haven't seen other people in a while, and they're going to double down into that area. Well, as it relates to travel, again, trips idea, I think, is a very important and impactful one for us. And Stephen, my apologies if people are chatting. I can't see it with my screens because I'm presenting, so please do continue to interrupt. I'd be happy when I'm done sharing to go back and address anything too. So as it relates to meetings, I think the biggest thing here is that, and we've started to see this is already played out. Vaccine announcements came, people said, well, are you going to book a meeting tomorrow? No, no, but they are booking. We certainly, I will say, with the governor's announcement last week, 2 weeks ago, we have seen a surge in interest and inquiries, graduations, all these delayed ceremonies. That's another really big kind of segment that I would make sure that people think about. It's the weddings, but it's also the funerals and celebrations of life and the reunion, all of those things that were denied as we kind of went through the last year. Planners do feel that vaccines are a benefit and that it will make things go faster. But again, it's the wait and see. I think planners got a little burned at the beginning of the pandemic where they said, oh gosh, and they scrambled to rebook everything like 3-6 months later, and then they had to do it all over again. And I think that people are still a little bit gun shy. But I do think that confidence continues to grow for the back half of 2021, particularly Q3, Q4. You can see that when it comes to when is your next live event. Most are really starting to look at that at Q3, Q4. There's still some looking at 2022, but for the most part, people are feeling pretty confident that that they're going to be seeing some action as it relates to the end of the year. I think that this is just interesting. People think that hybrid meetings are lousy just because they did them for the last year, especially related to planners. It's not easier. It's like 2 meetings and it's twice the cost. And it is really hard to cross that divide of in-person versus virtual. So I think that these hybrid meetings for true meeting experiences, they'll just be different. You know, the education sessions will kind of go back to where they may have been before, where the true education sessions will be online. People also realize that they can't sit in front of a computer for 6 or 8 hours a day like maybe they could in an in-person meeting. You can see again that like virtual meetings too, more planners realize just how hard they are and how hard it is to keep people engaged and the short time bursts that you have for people. And again, it's not very conducive to being able to pack those 3 days full of the information that people need to get. And you can see that perhaps because of that, people are looking that they are going to return to booking the same number of meetings in the future. So I think that that's, again, under the category of speculation. Oh, are we all going to have less in-person meetings now? That was kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. I think that we've kind of seen more of this adjustment to what people remember as being the way we were and the desire and need. And it'll be interesting to see as we swing the other way, right? Do we end up settling somewhere in the middle, or do we kind of go back to the way that it was? And I think that remains to be seen. Particularly as it relates to Minneapolis, I do think that it's important to kind of flag that you can see people are scared of everything, but slight emphasis and interest as it relates to, you know, politics, civil unrest, crime. This survey did field, you know, after the insurrection at the Capitol. So, you know, from a national perspective, it was very top of mind. But obviously, this is something, particularly as we talk about safety, meeting attendee safety always used to be one of the top concerns of meeting planners. And safety is both COVID safety and public safety. And we are very focused on making sure that we address public safety as well as the personal safety. COVID safety has been addressed throughout our community. So I think, again, just kind of pulled out from this, this is a national problem. It's not just Minneapolis. Large cities across the country have seen spikes of crime in the past year. The carjacking trends that we've heard so much about Minneapolis and does carry over into other cities as well. So I think that this is something that will remain to be seen. I've talked a lot about in our presentations that we're waiting for 2 things, the vaccine and the verdict. The vaccine is here. The verdict is still 3 or 4 weeks away. Did you have something there, Stephen?
Yeah, I had a few questions about the meetings coming back from a few slides ago.
Yeah.
It was all great information. I just let you keep going. So, yeah, with you know, Minneapolis, the Q4 time period is generally lower demand, right? Because it's cold here. Do you see something? Do you see us being better in Q4 of this year than a typical year because of that?
I do. And the reason that I say that is because we have, like, I know that we did just bring a lot, you know, 1,600 person healthcare group that booked into the, I think, the second week of November. So I do think that we are there's no space, you know, a lot of the country is open and a lot is not. So think about all of these other conventions. We also are having folks that are calling around, you know, we've had this happen to us and it's happening to other people too, where they say we still need to get in a meeting and our first choice isn't available and we want to meet this year. And, you know, I think now with Minneapolis being quote unquote more open, people are looking to that. You know, we do still have a cap of 3,000. That requires a lot of movement and math and is very complicated. But honestly, we're a destination that does best with that type of group size anyway. So overnight, so we'll see.
Is Minneapolis anticipating lighter restrictions coming November, December, that they're kind of overbooking a little bit?
I wouldn't say no, they're overbooking because meeting planners are too fearful. They won't bet. They don't want to bet. They don't want to bet that like that's going to change. So really what we're seeing now is where people's minds are going. You know, it could also roll back. I don't think that that's going to happen with the vaccines. But, I think that's kind of where planners are just, they're not willing. They might've been at the beginning of the pandemic and they're not now.
Okay. Something to just keep, something for our, revenue managers and sales people on the phone and who'll be viewing this meeting is just to see that, just to hear that demand is looking at us in the fourth quarter, something that we maybe have been a little bit more relaxed on. So it's good to hear that they're looking at that. But it might take a little bit longer to get it in place, or they're waiting on more loosened restrictions or things like that. But it's good to hear that that we're looking at that, and then they're not just overlooking, fourth quarter, going, well, it's cold in December, we don't usually plan here, and we'll wait until next year. Because there is probably a lot. I think that there is a lot of demand, or a lot of desire to get back to the in-person meetings. I know with HSMAI Minnesota, I just started at the beginning of the meeting with that. We're wanting to see people in person again. We are doing the hybrid one for those who can't make it. We're trying that out, but I think we're ready to get back and seeing people face to face. The online stuff is a good gap filler for for nothing else. But I'm ready to get back out on the road and go to conferences again. I haven't been in one in over a year. I'm sure there's people on the phone that are in the same way. So we're just waiting for those to start getting scheduled, and it's glad to see that planners are moving that direction. Even this year. So that's good.
Yeah, and I think we'll continue to see those hybrids kind of carry through the year just because of the unknowns and, again, the variations in vaccine distribution as it relates to various cities and states. So I would keep a close eye on that. I think within the next 2 months, we'll have a really good sense of if we're going to get it. I'd be very surprised if we got anything of magnitude. If we don't get it within the next 6 to 8 weeks, at least. But even for leisure sports, right? I think that the sporting season will hopefully have larger opportunities with that as well. So we may see some carryover there.
Okay.
For leisure traveler, again, people are really excited. They are hitting the road. Optimism is there. People are booking. They're excited. I just booked a trip in November to Austin with some friends, things like that. I was on a plane for the first time in a year down to Florida a week ago. So, people are excited and they're starting to get out there. And I think a big part of this, and this kind of goes a little bit to what I was talking about before with the traveler versus the general population. There's a lot of these people have been vaccinated or partially vaccinated, or they intend to be. There's a very small percentage of the traveling public that thinks that they're going to get, vaccinated in June or beyond. People are really like, I'm good. There's a definite wall here of I'm going to be good by the time June 1st rolls around, and I'm ready to hit the road. So hopefully that will be beneficial for us. Again, you can start to see those summer wave. And I want to talk a little bit before I close out, that it's about a little bit about the meetings in particular, since that was something that we talk about. And I know that it's something that's so important to the compression and to setting the rest of what's going on. Just from Meet Minneapolis perspective, we have a lot of focus on a number of different groups in the upcoming months. So obviously we've got the meeting planners, those that are rebooking, trying to capture new meetings. The sports groups continue to be, amateur sports groups continue to be the thing that we're seeing, and are really those dance groups, those gymnastics groups. There's stuff at US Bank Stadium, there's stuff at Target Center. So those are coming into play. Obviously the meeting attendees, making sure that they feel safe, both public safety and COVID safety, and then the leisure traveler. How do we talk to them? How do we get them to grab one of those 10,000 seats at the Twins game? How do we bring them back into Minneapolis? I think that's one of the things we'll be watching very carefully is, do those people that normally would have stayed in Minneapolis, do they stay somewhere else? And that is from a hotel perspective, that's something that we will be watching. We know that Bloomington, for example, has done considerably better than Minneapolis as far as impacts and occupancy. So we continue to have a flexible plan. You'll see rolled out creative, rolled out dollars from Minneapolis, but also you're going to see a lot of emphasis on those conversations. So much has happened in Minneapolis in the last year, and an ad can't possibly cover that. So really a lot of emphasis on working to make sure that we are getting in front of meeting planners and we're being able to talk to them. So that's sponsored speaking opportunities, things like that. continue to having a lot of information about COVID and COVID safety, as well as the reputation and safety concerns, what's happening, what's opening, who's doubling down on Minneapolis and downtown in particular. What does it look like after the civil unrest? What happens with the verdict? This is the type of creative that we'll be running with. So very flexible creative that can be customized to various groups, which we're very excited about, different themes. Right now we're in this help plan idea, but we are moving right now into this ready to host. So again, this is a very significant shift for us because we've kind of been in this, hold steady, then we'll help you to plan since, late fall, but now we're ready to have you. And that's going to be very important for us. And then these are just some of the tactics that we're going to be employing in the next couple months to make sure that we're able to get there. So two other quick things I wanted folks to know about. We continue to have a monthly webinar where we share information. We also invite in speakers. So Dave St. Peter is our speaker next week from the Twins. So continue to have these monthly partner webinar series. And if you're interested in any of those, just let me know. As well as Meet Minneapolis Legacy Project is an internal staff group that has worked to advance the conversations around race and equity, both within our organizations, but also within our partners. And we have a series of speakers, a speaker series that has been moderated by Mayor Shell's former mayor, Sharon Sells-Belton, that we are also opening up to partners and those that are interested. So we do have the next one of these coming up in April. This is one that happened last week, and we do have as a recording, but wanted to share too that we continue to provide that information for folks as well. So I have one other thing that I wanted to try and share. Let's see if I can make it work, which is always very challenging. And I'm going to give everybody a little bit of hope and optimism if it wants to play. All right, it's not going to want to play. I'm going to give you the link so you can see, but we do have a lot of exciting stuff that is coming in the next year. And I think it's very important to end on a moment of optimism. So I encourage you to go and check that out.
Okay, we'll take a look at that and we'll share it as well. So thanks, Courtney. Does anybody have any questions for, sorry, before we start, I have one. With the webinars that you were talking about there, is it all on meetminneapolis.com where you can register for those? Or
Yes, yeah, under our partner section. So
okay.
I'll see if I can grab that link really quick right now too.
Okay, great. Does anybody have any questions for Courtney while she's getting that? Okay. Typically a quiet group, but we'll share the information on our YouTube page. This recording will be on our YouTube page, HSMAI Minnesota. It'll be on our website, hsmaiminnesota.com. Under the education section, we'll post the slide deck. We'll post the video that Courtney was going to share with us. So go out and watch that. As for HSMAI Minnesota, we have our event coming up on April 15th, which is our next one in-person event at the Best Western Mall of America. We'll be talking about reinventing the new you. So registration will be opening up in the next couple of weeks about that. The meeting is on April 15th at 3 o'clock. So save the date on your calendars for that. We have a upcoming Zoom meeting for our April event coming up, which is with Bob Anderson from Star Performance. So some of you might remember Bob from our very, very first HSMAI Minnesota Live event. So we'll be welcoming him back to talk more about sales. So lots of things coming up from HSMAI Minnesota. So stay connected with us and on our website or on LinkedIn, and you'll see more updates about that. But with all that, if there's no other questions for Courtney, thank you, Courtney. Lots of great information as well. We're excited about Minneapolis, and it's good to hear that meeting planners are working hard to get business back in our hotels in our city. So I'm looking forward to continuing the recovery here. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Courtney. Bye.